Hello, Algebra 3 students. So we're going to be doing some work here together to get ready to finish up the term and be looking at still looking at Module 2 right now. Maybe we'll look at Module 3 later on. So the first thing I'm going to be looking at here is solving, and we're going to solve using factoring. I guess I just could have said solve. So I have some folks here with me in the Zoom, but you won't hear them if they ask questions. So go ahead and ask questions as you will. And if you don't understand a step, please let me know. Now I'm going to show a way to factor that's different than what they do in the curriculum, because not everyone is liking the way that they do the factoring by grouping. So the first thing we need to do in this problem is get all of our terms on one side. So we're going to subtract a 4x from both sides, and that will give us x squared, and I'm actually going to make that into black ink there because I will need colors later. I'll probably need green. So x squared minus 4x minus 5 is equal to 0. All right, so this method for factoring, it's called, I'll call it the X box. Generic rectangle diamond problem. There are different names for it, but I'll call it X box. So here is the box, and here is the X. And you may like this less or more. We will see. So the first thing I'm going to do is remember that, so this x squared term, it goes in the lower left-hand corner of our box, and the negative 5 goes in the upper right-hand corner of our box. Now we multiply those together and put them in the top of our x. So we have negative 5x squared. That's what it is when we multiply them. And then we take the middle term of our trinomial there, the quadratic, that middle term, and that's going to go into the bottom of our x. So we have a negative 4x. So now over here and over here, whatever goes there, when I add them together, they equal that. So that's added. And when I multiply them together, they equal that. So this probably feels a little bit like the step after you break the middle term apart. This is how you break the middle term apart. So we multiply here. All right. Now what I notice is that when I multiply these two things, I get a negative. The only way to get a negative when you multiply is that one is negative and the other is positive. So I'm going to say this is a negative something x, and this is a positive something x. Now when I add them together, I get a negative 4x. And when I multiply, I get a negative 5x squared. So let's see. If I'm multiplying together to get negative 5, so I need something to equal negative 5, and when I multiply it, it's going to be a positive and a negative. So it could be a positive 1 times a negative 5, and that would work. Or it could be a positive 5 times a negative 1, and that would also work. So the question is, which one of these, when I add them together, will equal negative 4? Well, this one does. So this is going to be a negative 5, a negative 5x and a positive 1x. And that's how we make sure that you can see that. That's how we get these two right here. And in the other method, the grouping method, that is the breaking apart of the middle term. Now, those are going to go up into these spots here, and it doesn't matter which one they go into. Either one is fine. And I don't actually need to say positive 1x. I can just say x. And so I'm going to move all this down just a little bit. So now when I look at the box here, this is like the area of this square is, or this rectangle is x squared. It's a square in this case. So what times what is equal to x squared? Well, you know, that has to be x times x. Length times width is area. And so that's x times x is x squared. If this is x, then this is also x. So what's the height going to be if the area of this part is negative 5x? Well, x times what is negative 5x? X times negative 5. Similarly, if this is x, then this is x. So x times what is x? Well, x times 1. So now these are the new binomials. So we can now rewrite this as the quantity x minus 5 times the quantity x plus 1 equals 0. And now each of these, so now we are going to use what is known as the zero product property. So if we're multiplying two things together and the result is 0, either the first thing needs to equal 0, or the second thing needs to equal 0. If this or this, if both of them are not 0, then when we multiply them together, they won't equal 0. So one of them has to be 0. Now we can solve here, adding 5 to both sides, we get x equals 5. And subtracting 1 here, we get x equals negative 1. So that is the way that we use the Xbox method to factor and solve this quadratic. Questions for folks that are here with me? Do you want to ask a question right now? Okay, so I'm going to make the problem slightly more difficult now. Let's see. Would seeing another one of those be good with a little bit more difficult factoring? I'm gonna do another more difficult one. All right. Okay, so on this one, we're going to, again, solve, and it's going to be 5x squared minus 15 equals 10x. All right, now I'm going to get all of my terms on one side by subtracting 10x. Now, be careful, I cannot combine this term with either of these because this is an x squared term, can't be combined with an x term. This is a constant, there's no x attached to it, can't be combined with an x term. So I'm just going to get 5x squared minus 10x minus 15 equals 0 because this equals 0. Now, you wouldn't want to write 5x squared minus 15 minus 10x equals 0. It's not written in standard form. It's not the way that we write it when we're accustomed to factoring. So put it in the order of largest exponent to smallest exponent. And this is actually an x to the 0, which is just 1. So ignore that. But if you know what I'm saying, great. If you don't, just ignore it. All right. Now, what I notice when I look at these three terms is that they're all divisible by 5. So I'm going to start by factoring out a 5. So here I have 5 times the quantity. So 5 times what is 5x squared? 5 times x squared. 5 times what is negative 10x? Negative 2x. 5 times what is negative 15? Negative 3. And that is still all equal to 0. So, question. So far, how's that? Is that feeling okay? Or any questions from the audience? Okay, good, good. All right. So then the next step is to use the box and diamond method there. So if we're doing the box and diamond method, I'm going to move all this over a little bit. Box. Box and X box. Sorry. Box and it's generic rectangle diamond is what it's originally called. So, yeah. All right. So we have our x squared term goes in the lower left-hand corner. The constant goes in the upper left. Multiplying them together, negative 3x squared. Next, we take the x term, and that goes in the bottom of the diamond. And so now we have to ask ourselves, when we're adding these together, we get negative 2x, and when we're multiplying them, we get negative 3x squared. Again, multiplying and getting a negative means one needs to be positive something x and one needs to be negative something x. All right. And if that is the case, so we then ask ourselves, we say, all right, well, something times some, well, let's do adding. So we can do either way. Let's do multiplying. So something times something equals negative 3. Well, a negative 1 times positive 3, well, that equals negative 3. But if we add those together, do we get a negative 2? No. So it's got to be a positive 1 and a negative 3. And when we multiply those, we get a negative 3. And when we add them, we get a negative 2. So this is going to be positive 1x and a negative 3x. And again, those come over here in either place. Let's do x up here and negative 3x here. Now, what times what is x squared? X times x is x squared. X times what is x? X times 1. X times what is negative 3x? Negative 3. Oh, one other important thing that I didn't show before. Negative 3 times positive 1 is negative 3. So that's also, it works out that way, and it's important that it does. If it doesn't, then something has gone wrong. So I can rewrite this as 5 times the quantity, x plus 1 times the quantity, x minus 3 equals 0. Now, although it doesn't really make much difference in the way we are looking at this, this is 5 times this equals 0. So we're really multiplying 3 things together, but that doesn't really matter. Nonetheless, either x plus 1 equals 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. For the same reason as before, it's the zero product property. And so we just need to solve each of those two equations now. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides, and I get x equals negative 1. Add 3 to both sides, and x equals 3. And those are my solutions for solving a quadratic using using factoring. Questions on that? All right. So I think that my my mouse just died. All right, here we go. So, would you like to do another problem like that or move on to a different kind of problem? Okay. Okay, just 1 second. All right. Let's look at a more difficult problem yet. Okay, this will be good. 2x squared equals 5 plus 3x. Now, would you prefer that I do the Xbox method or the factoring by grouping method? You've seen the Xbox a couple times. Okay, so you like that one better. Okay, factoring by grouping it is. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I get 2x squared minus 5 equals 3x. Subtract 3x from both sides. So this is just getting all of my terms on one side, so the other side equals 0. And when you have a quadratic equation, that's what you have to have. All right. So now if we're going to do factoring by grouping, then I'm going to look at this 2 and this negative 5, and I'm going to multiply those together. So 2 times negative 5 equals negative 10. So however I break this apart, this negative 3x, I need the product to be negative 10. All right, so one thing that I notice right away is that 2 and negative 5, when I add those together, I get negative 3, which is what I need. I need the sum to be negative 3 and the product to be negative 10. So right away, I can see that I'm going to break apart this negative 3x as negative 2x, positive 2x, and minus 5x. So you can see that when I add those together, I get the negative 3x. So I haven't changed the equation, I've just changed the way it looks. I've broken apart that middle term into two terms that equal it. And when I multiply those together, I get negative 10, which came from 2 times negative 5. Now I can factor out a 2x from here. When I do that, 2x times what is it 2x squared? 2x times x. 2x times what is positive 2x? 2x times 1 is a positive 2x. Now, here, I factor out negative 5, and I get, what would have happened if I would have factored out a positive 5? Let's have a look. If I would have factored out a positive 5, 5 times what is negative 5x? That would be negative x. 5 times what is negative 5? Negative 1. So if I would have done that, look what would have happened. These would have not matched up. And they have to match up. Okay? So that's why what we have to do is we have to factor out a negative 5, because then negative 5 times what is negative 5x? Negative 5 times x. Negative 5 times what is negative 5? Positive 1. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. So now these match up, which is necessary. And there we are. So now we can factor out the x plus 1 from each of these two terms. So we get the quantity x plus 1, and I will show that this came from here and here. And then we have the times the quantity 2x minus 5. And that came from 2x minus 5 right there. And now we need to, again, we have a binomial times a binomial equals 0. So either the first binomial, x plus 1 equals 0, just 1 second here. Oops. All right. So either x plus 1 equals 0, or 2x minus 5 equals 0. One of those things has to be true. In this case, we subtract 1 and learn that x must equal negative 1. In this case, we add 5 so that we have 2x equals 5, and divide by 2 so we get x equals 5 over 2. So either x equals negative 1 or x equals 5 halves, which is 2.5. And I think this is a good spot to pause and start another recording so that it doesn't go too long. First, do you want to ask any questions, audience members? Yeah. On the same problem? Sure. Okay. All right. So, the request is to use the Xbox method on this same problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here and do the Xbox down here. And so I take that negative 2 and the negative 2x squared and put that here. Well, that's a little big. And the negative 5 goes up here. And now I multiply those together and I get positive 10x squared. Now, I don't know how to do colors so that when I multiply them, it comes out to be exactly right, but I'm going to try this. 10, no, I guess that should be an orange, would make more sense. 10x squared. So, do you see where this comes from? Just multiplying those together. And then the negative 3x from right here goes in the bottom. Oh, wait. You should have said, wait, Mr. White Wolf, why is there a negative here? And there shouldn't have been. That should not be a negative. Which means we need a negative in front. That should be a negative 10x squared. So now something times something is a negative. That means we need a positive something x and a negative something x. So what times what equals negative 10? Well, negative 1 times positive 10 is negative 10. Whoops. Need to give myself some more room there. Let me go down here. Equals negative 10. But when I add those together, do they give me a negative 3? No, they give me a positive 9. Positive 1 times negative 10 is negative 10. But when I add those together, do they give me negative 3? No, they give me negative 9. All right, let's try a negative 2 times a positive 5. Well, that equals negative 10. When I add those together, do I get negative 3? Nope. I get positive 3. And that means it may be a positive 2 times negative 5. That also equals negative 10. And when I add those together, I get the negative 3. So that works. So I have positive 2x and negative 5x. And in the video, I might be in the way of that, so I'm going to put it up there like that so you can see what I was looking at. So those now come over here, either place, doesn't matter which one. So I'm going to put 2x here and negative 5x there. So here's one spot, here's one spot that is important. Notice that neither of these, they do not have a common factor other than x. But these do have a common factor, 2. So that means I need to put a 2x here and just an x here. So 2x times x is equal to 2x squared. X times what is equal to negative 5x? Negative 5. 2x times what is a positive 2x? 2x times 1. And now this is where we go back to right there. So here's our 2x, whoops, wrong colors, our x plus 1 and our 2x minus 5. And so this step from here to there, those steps are the same as doing the box and diamond. That's really what it boils down to. So which one do you like better on this problem? Yeah. I think the Xbox method is pretty handy. I've been teaching the grouping method because that's what the curriculum teaches, but I like the Xbox method. All right, I'm going to stop it here. This is going to be a super long video, 28 minutes, and we'll do some more work in just a minute.